Everybody, it's me, your host, Richard Linares, and I am here. This is your What's Good show. So here we are. Today's been an amazing day. I have my friend Teresa with me. What's up, Teresa?
Hey.
Woo! She's one of my new therapists. She's helping me today. I got a speeding ticket today. No, not a speeding ticket. I got a ticket for being on my phone today.
You know you're not supposed to do that. Fear judgment.
Moving on to the next thing for the show today. Let me go ahead and hook this up right here. Here we go. So today we have an awesome show. We are going to be talking, well, actually an awesome, powerful, and for some people it might be a really painful show. We're going to be talking about death. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about grieving. One of the things that what I really wanted to do as what happened to Kobe took place, and the news was unfolding. Being part of one of the most traumatic experiences that Southern California experienced with the Thousand Oaks situation with the borderline, and seeing what it required for a community to come together and how a community grieved, because the borderline incident, there was a shooting and then the next day there were the fires. And working for Interface, one of the things that I was directly involved with is helping out with the immediate intake and working with the families and talking with them and assessing their specific needs so that they can get the right support, whether it was financially support. A lot of these kids that left the bar at Borderline, they left their cell phones, they left their purses, they left their belongings. And then there had to be the whole process of notifying family members and loved ones, and just seeing the way that the sheriff's department came out and gave a public announcement and even said that they sort of even they came for TMZ, and they even said in one of the opening statements, they're we are waiting to allow the process of notifying the next of kin to take its place, and unfortunately TMZ has put out a bunch of information. And so knowing behind the scenes of Borderline, because they have to wait to notify the people, and the most horrible thing is to hear that something happened and then to hear it from the news and not directly, and have everyone else be involved. And so there's so many layers upon layers upon layers that I witnessed in the Borderline incident that I'm now seeing unfold with regards to Kobe and with regards to his family, with regards to his fans, because this hit close to home. This is Southern California's team. This is Los Angeles teams. This is a California team, and so many people, 20 years. We've seen him on TV. We've seen him playing ball. We've seen his humanitarian efforts. We've seen him raise his children. And so, when I hit you up on Sunday, I said, hey, Chica, let's go ahead and let's redirect our conversation, and let's really talk about helping people with death, helping people with grieving, because what ends up happening is that a lot of times the news is just constant, and it's overwhelming for some people. Mm-hmm. I even had a friend tell me today that the news keeps on talking about this. Can you change the subject? And I'm like, I get it that the news is still talking about it, but what the news is talking about is the facts. They're not really addressing how does someone deal with it. They're not addressing the fact, how does someone cope with death. They're not addressing the fact of what's happening to the people that are being triggered because of this incident. And so that's why I'm glad that you're here with me. We also have Miss Silly Panda Media over there in the background. I'm going to go ahead and put her, there's her shot right there. Aww. Oh, look at, I'm learning how to work this, how special, how fancy. Look at, here, we're going to be talking to Miss Silly. You're on the camera right now, Chica. You want to wave? Which one? Yeah. That's the camera right there in front of you. Yay. You guys might know her. She is famous. She has a show on Thursday nights. Let's change the view from Miss Silly Panda Media. We'll go back to us over here. So, let's talk about trauma. Let's talk about the death. Let's talk about grievance. But before we get into that, what is your feedback? Where were you at when you heard the news?
I was in my living room, mm-hmm. and my husband told me that Kobe had died. And I don't think we were watching the news, were we? We weren't watching the news yet, but then we put the news on, and it was just, I personally am not a Lakers fan, mm-hmm. correct, and I didn't grow up with basketball. It was just football, but as my husband got into basketball, I got into it as well. And of course, I know who Kobe is, and my dad loved Kobe, my brother loved Kobe, and they were into basketball. So I think what really got me was just when you got the news that it was possible that Gigi was in there. Mm. And then that's where the tears fell. Mm. And it was just because I was impacted, and I think one of the biggest questions is, how do you get impacted from somebody that you've never met and why does it affect you in a certain way? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, so I was home and I was watching just TV with my husband.
Mrs. Silly Pandemilio, we're going to come to you over there. How was it that you heard? Where were you at when you heard what happened?
Sunday we were actually at church, and we had just finished the service, and I was walking outside, and I saw one of my daughters, Miranda, and she was on her phone, and she looked at me, she's like, Mom, she's like, did you see on social media? I'm like, what? I mean, social media has so much stuff that just always gets put out, whether it's truth or not truth. And she had said, they're saying that Kobe died. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, Kobe Bryant. I'm like, I know they're talking about. I'm like, that's a lie. Like, that was my instant response, seriously, because of, the person, he's well known and all of that. It's like, really? Like, that's not true. And she's like, no, Mom, they're really saying. And when I looked at my phone, I think it was like maybe like 12:45 or something like that, or 11:45. And I just like, again, same as Teresa, like, it's crazy how someone that you don't personally know, like the feeling that you get inside. And like for me, I mean, I'm, Lakers fan, of course in the house, Jose watches it all the time, the games and all of that, and just knowing Kobe who he was. But then I think more for me, it was more of just everything that he's done besides basketball, and how everything that he did was, just grows and everything, but then also him being the family man. I think that is more of what hit me, and then instantly you start thinking about the wife and the kids and so many different emotions going on. So
I think it was really trippy because we were watching the news about the helicopter crash, and that's all it was a helicopter crash.
Right.
And then, just hearing that it over and over, and then all of a sudden it was like everything kind of came together, and then to hear how so close to home it was, and to find out it was him.
Yeah, it was impactful. And I mean, Jose doesn't have a mic on him, but we can hear you, I think, still, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so Jose, like, where were you at? Were you with your wifey?
Yeah, I was with my wife. I got a DM from my brother, and all they said was, no, not Kobe. And when my brother did that, my brother is like my brother was lucky enough, was when Q106, Q107?
One of the radio stations.
One of the radio stations, his last game, my brother won tickets to go see me, and he had just bought a pair of Kobe shoes, and on the ride over there, he didn't wear them until he got off at the Staples Center and put on the Kobe shoes, and he got to see Kobe's epic last game. So when my brother did that, I was like, oh no, something bad happened. And I was in service when, towards the end of the service, and I saw the news, and like, it actually, it's weird because I've had friends died, but this one, I think it, like I even told her today, she sent me something that, everybody's talking about it all over the world, right? So, but to me it cut real hard because I have 5 daughters and I know he has 4. So to me, it was like, to hear what had happened, he was on his way with his daughter to do what they both love, and I felt grief. And it's weird because I can honestly say I've never felt this type of grief that I've have for someone that I've never met. But yet, there's people that I've known, good friends and all that have passed away. But it was just, I think because of his impact, not just in basketball, but you would always see him with his family, his daughters. And I think that's what hit me the most, is because right away I started reflecting on my girls. And we've had a near-death experience with one of my children, so I know, that ugly feeling as a parent to feel helpless, when you see your child, in a very traumatic way. So that's why I think, and I didn't realize that, I didn't think about, that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and then Jose, like just being human, you think about, because there's that connection that you have, and that being human, you automatically will place yourself in that position. And like you say, you have 5 girls, and thinking about, God, what would I do in that type of situation, or else just placing yourself in that and saying, I have no idea what I would have felt during that time, and you could only imagine.
Yeah.
And it's about it's about feeling that connection.
Exactly.
And the way it's impacted like you, and that's why there's so much grief, and a lot of the community is grieving through this because they found a connection, whether he was an idol or he was like I heard this guy talk on the news about, you know, how he was like a father figure to him.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have that, and so he had impacted a lot of people, whether or not they had met him. He was just an idol.
He was iconic. Yes. You know, so and then the way it happens, you always hear stories about, you know, famous people. They're either very you know, advanced in age and they pass away, but this was just like, he was 41. You know, he was just he just won an Academy Award, and you know, and it's just like, wow, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of shock.
Yeah.
I hooked up the camera, so now you're on. Now we get to see you, Mr. Silly Panda Media.
Oh.
So there you go. So with that said, like that's where we were all in different places. You know, we all started hearing the news. You know, and then the report started coming out. The fact that it was, first of all, it was 5 individuals. Was what the news was saying. It's like five, and then it went to 9.
Yeah.
And then you started seeing the pictures. You know, the coach, the daughter, the parent, you know, all, like the families that started getting affected, and you're like, wow, this is going to be really deep. This is going to be very powerful. This is going to take a huge toll on a lot of people, which is once again why I've made this show a full hour long of talking with you, a therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist, because one of the things I've said about our program is that one of our staple segments will always be What's Good with Your Emotions, where we talk with coaches and therapists and psychologists, and we provide that entry level education so that people that possibly don't have access to these services or can't afford these services can possibly get some assistance. And if it's through what we provide here on the show, it's a blessing. It's a huge blessing. So let's talk a little bit about it from a therapeutic point of view, from a professional point of view. Take us through the process and the journey of someone dealing with trauma, dealing with bereavement, dealing with death. Help us out with that.
Well, I think when there's a loss, the automatic reaction is going to be the grief. And that's just like those automatic emotions and those feelings that come up, and it's just kind of like that shock and confusion and why, and then going kind of like into like an existential crisis, like, what does this mean? You know, can this happen to me? And there's just all of these thoughts and feelings and emotions, and that's kind of just where the grief comes from. And then kind of after that initial grief moment comes the mourning and bereavement process. And so when you talk about like the mourning and bereavement, that's just trying to really make sense of what's happening. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling so confused? And just kind of questioning life in general. And that's a normal part of the process. And after that, it's just mourning and just being with the loss and just dealing with all these different emotions. There is no end to grief. Honestly, there isn't.
I'm so glad you say that.
It is ongoing. And I know like there's a lot of theories out there that says, you know, how you should be grieving, or, you know, what are the stages of it. I'm not a big believer in it. I've gone through my own grief myself with my parents and just other loved ones that I've lost. And unless you've lost somebody, you kind of really don't, you can hear it, but you don't know that feeling inside. And it's just ongoing. And to be okay with that, like to really be okay with whether you are experiencing that yourself, or your loved one is, like your partner or even your kids, because I did see a lot of kids that they were interviewing on the news about how impactful that was for them. And as a parent, I could imagine how scary that is for you to see your child crying over their idol or somebody that they never met, but knowing how powerful that can be for them.
I think one of the people groups that's being affected, I want to see if you see a difference, because like this is normally men are really tough, like, and they have like these they have the way that they respond to things, but I think this has really affected a lot of men, because this is sports. Men and women love sports, But but for the longest time, like this is what they do. This is what they watch. These are their idols and stuff. Do you see that men deal with grief differently than what women are dealing with grief? Do you see that in the practice? I mean, is there maybe something that we can help our male audience to understand how they can understand? Because we're a lot of men. I mean, especially in Latino culture, we're told not to cry. No chillas, because I'll give you a reason to cry, is what our parents used to say, like la chancla, el huarache, something's gonna come at us. So, like a lot of us are raised to not cry. So, how do we help men understand these emotions and these feelings and be able to express them? Like, help me out with, is it male and females? Is there a difference? Do you see that?
So yes, there is a difference, and like you say, like with males, you are taught like that machismo type of upbringing where you shouldn't be crying, that you have to be strong, and you shouldn't let your emotions out. But actually, for me, the way I encourage my clients to kind of cry and let out their emotions is just like, well, no, actually, strength is having the ability to cry in front of others and to let out those emotions in front of others, because not only if you are a parent, you're modeling that for your kids too as well. And knowing how important that is, that you are modeling that having negative emotions like sadness and grief is part of life. And you're not trying to be strong, or you're not trying to just kind of keep it together, because then what are you teaching your kids? That they can't cry, that that they should be keeping it together, or however you see it as keeping together. And so I've always encouraged my parents that I work with to cry in front of your kids, to let them know that it's okay, and to normalize that, and then to identify what those feelings are that they are experiencing for the sake of their children. Now, if we're talking more of individually, if you are in a relationship, connecting with a partner, if you have a partner, and expressing your emotions to them, because what that does is it creates a healthy communication between you and your partner, and so you guys are able to talk about those feelings instead of you just shutting down, because men are known to shut down often. Shut down, put the game on, or shut down and put the
True.
It's true,
shut
right?
down and put the game on.
Yeah,
and imagine
TV.
They shut down and they try to put on the game, and all that's being on the news is what's taking place. Give our wives, our girlfriends, how can they help their men process and deal with what's going on with regards to this situation?
Give them time. Let them just be. Like, being okay with them needing some time to be quiet, needing some time to just kind of reflect and process their own emotions, because part of turning on the TV, or part of just kind of being there alone, is their way of processing through this, because a lot of times, and a lot of men don't know how to express their emotions, and the last thing they need is for you to be like, what's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. Why aren't you talking to me? I mean, I'm guilty of that. I'm very guilty of that.
We have a hand over there. What's going on?
No.
Are you guilty? Have you done that? No, you ever done that? No.
Just kidding.
Just kidding.
I think it's because for women, it's like our own therapy is really to talk things out.
Correct.
Versus a man's is not. They'd
Correct.
rather be left alone to deal with whatever
Right.
they're going through. So for us to try to understand, I think it's more of like we only understand if they're communicating to us what's going on with them.
Exactly.
So understanding where they're at, and yes, I agree, it's probably better to leave them alone, because anything that might come out of their mouth is going to be an emotional type of response.
Exactly.
And might not end well in conversation. Just over the years, that's what I've learned anyway, is just kind of leave it be, and if he's ready, then he's ready, he knows that you're there to kind of, just listen. And it doesn't even mean you have to say anything back, just listen. I think
Right. And then also letting them know, I'm here to, I know you're just kind of like, I guess, saying something like amongst, and I know this is really difficult for you. I know you're going through a lot. I'm just gonna let you just be, and just do your own thing, and just know I love you and I'm here. And if you ever want to talk, then we can talk. But just kind of like letting him know that you are observing, or letting your partner know what you are observing, and just letting it be, and then just kind of having the door open. If they want to talk to you, they can, and that's really up to them. And then that's kind of the same thing that goes for kids too. It's just you're gonna check in with them. You're gonna, ask them, are they okay? But also too, kind of giving them that guidance of just like, yes, you can talk to me. Yes, I'm here. Letting them know how they can talk to you, and then just kind of letting them be.
I do have a question, Teresa. What would you say is, I guess, like a safe way to continue to grieve a lost one? Because I'm sure that there's like dangers in maybe grieving too. I don't want to say too long, because like you said, there's never an end to grieving. But when does it become a danger for somebody?
That's a really good question. So with grieving, you'll see, crying, you'll see some isolation, you'll see somebody not wanting to talk about, like kind of some avoidance. And that's all part of the normal process. You'll see some anger as well. But when it becomes an issue and it's concerning, then you're seeing it affect their daily life. So they can't go to work, or it's affecting their struggles at school. Maybe they're having difficulty driving, or they're not eating, or they're overeating, or they just have like no motivation. They are completely in isolation, where they used to want to go out and do certain things and be willing to, and now they are just completely just shutting the whole world out. And then of course when it becomes like depression, because those are kind of signs of depression, any self-cutting behaviors, or having suicidal thoughts, or having just some really constant low moments, then that's when you want to seek out therapy.
Jose, is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
All right. So, Jose, hearing what you've heard with regards to how men, and like I said, we don't want to say that all men handle it this way. Mm-hmm. Everyone handles it differently because people have different upbringings. They have different, they've learned different lessons in life. Mm-hmm. How have you seen your male friends? Have you heard from your male friends? What has been the dialogue between guys and bros with regards to dealing with the death and this grieving process that we're all going through as a community because of an iconic figure like Kobe?
It's a good question. To be honest with you, I haven't really talked to anybody as far as my friends or whatever about the situation, because I'm still I'm in shock. You know what I mean? It's I can remember when they won, I ran down Sabres with my Laker jersey on and two other ones down on my arms, and I'm running up and down Sabres, the last time they won. So I was I'm a Laker fan, I was a Kobe fan, it's still it's unreal to me still. And just watching the feeds that I've been watching and actually, but what I did notice is I've seen all these professionals on Instagram, Stephen A. Smith and all these guys, Max and Kellen and all these guys that I listen to on through social media, that these guys, they know Kobe. They interviewed him. They played ball with him, and what I've seen is and what I noticed in the spectrum of really is a bunch of men have realized, have probably taken the back of everything that they've done, all these people that I look up to, successful men, right? And realize just how mortal we are, from a routine flight that he's probably taken thousands of times, to go, because, it's been since the Mamba Academy been in Thousand Oaks for a few years now, and I'm sure this is his. It's a routine trip. He doesn't like taking. He didn't like the LA traffic, so he has his own helicopter. He's Kobe, right?
Yeah.
And he has that means of transportation, but it's just like I said, I'm grieving. You know what I mean? And I think. Like I said before, is because and then I've heard that I just saw this touching, I forget who it was, but she works for Sports Center, and how she just met Kobe briefly for 30 minutes, and how he was such enthused about her having a baby, but he was more enthused about him being a girl dad, and that's what I am. So I think that's what affected me the most. Is I know what it is to come home to a house full of girls. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that and that's been taken away from his other girls. And I can only imagine, what that feels like. I just, like with me, like I get panicked, like I look at my phone, I'm like, find my, I have my daughter on there. I'm like, I know when she gets out of school, so I hit that, find my phone, right? And I can see her, the little steps walking towards home. And I'm like, okay, cool, so I'm an overprotective dad no matter what, I didn't allow my older daughters to date until they were, 17?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they did before we knew, but.
But, that's, I'm a dad, and I'm like, I know what guys think when you're 16 and you're an adolescent, right? So yeah, I've always been the strict dad, but it's just, and I think I haven't really. Don't get me wrong. I heard what you said, and like I was kind of convicted because I went in my room and I cried, and because and when I heard the news and everything, and I went in my room and I wanted to be by myself and just cry, because of a hero in my life had just passed away. I was like, whoa. And not only that, but I would look towards the things that he was doing now, writing kids books about sports, getting a message across to kids, to young people. So his mentality was not just to affect the next future, the next generation of children that were coming up. He obviously did it with his children, but in writing books, and then he came out with an animation, won an Academy Award. So my thing was like, because this is kind of like I was in the second chapter of my life, I'll be 47, and now we're doing this media stuff. So I was trying to mimic what he did. Like, okay, cool. I felt like I was a champ in my younger years. Now I'm trying to achieve something different. And if winning an Academy Award and stuff like that, you've seen him do it, and it's just like, okay, cool. If someone like him can just grasp the work ethic and the work mentality and the tenaciousness just to go after something, that's what I would pattern from him. That's what I got from him, and try to apply that to my own life and with my kids and with whatever it is that I'm pursuing, in life and at work too.
I appreciate you, Jose. Thank you. That's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that when we had this conversation, we included, of course, Denise and, of course, Jose. I'm not really a sports fan. Like, I'll watch sports, probably just like Super Bowl and things like that, but I'm not really watching sports. I don't follow them, but like I love the Super Bowls. I love the parties because they have lots of good food. And sometimes I just enjoy that. So I've never really been a sports fan. So I knew that when I asked you and I was like, hey, are you down? Are you open? Because we need that male perspective. We need that hearing from a man, because that's, of course, sometimes it's easier for some men to be like, hey, you know what? I can identify with that. I can identify with what he's saying, because it's no longer coming. Because, let's be honest, because sometimes guys have a hard time listening to women. Am I right or am I wrong? I don't know. Do you have a hard time listening to your wifey? So as men, we have a hard time listening, sometimes. And so I like I said, I appreciate your feedback, and I love the fact how you said grieving is it's a lifelong journey, because it's not fair to tell someone there's a timeline.
No.
Because it's forever. Birthdays, anniversaries, things that were celebrated on a regular basis, and depending on how close you were to that individual, everything's gonna trigger it. Movies, songs, and all this other kind of stuff. People have to go through that. So grieving, people have to grieve. People have to accept, that it's gonna be okay. As you've said, with regards to men, women, your wives, girlfriends, give them some space. Let them be able to process, the pain. Let them be able to deal with it on their own. And maybe, how does a woman know that their man is ready to talk about it? Like, what should she do? Like, and I know that and if I'm going like way off with my questions and the way I'm asking you, please let me know, because you're the professional, but I know that you're not God, so I know that you don't know it all, but I appreciate your wisdom. So how can a woman know when her man's ready to talk about it?
She needs to ask him.
Okay.
And he may just never want to talk about it, and that's okay.
Wow.
And if he doesn't want to, that's fine. And she needs to respect that.
Wow.
Be okay with that.
That's huge.
It is huge.
That's huge, because a woman really always wants to, like, what's wrong, babe? What's
Right.
going on, babe? Whatever. And like, yeah, wow, that's huge. And I think it's really powerful for a woman to hear that from a therapist and be like, hey, give him space, and he might not need to share with you. It just because you got your whole love languages thing. People communicate in different ways and
Correct.
stuff.
And because your partner is grieving, and when your partner is grieving, you need to let them just grieve at their own pace, because no one's telling you. Because in a way, it's like you're telling them okay, you need to talk to me about it now. Like, I need you to focus on my needs, because I need to know what's going on. So it's kind of like this battle between the two of you guys meeting each other's needs. It's like, no, I need you to meet my needs by kind of like reassuring me and lowering my own anxiety over me not being able to talk to you about this situation. And then there's your partner's part where they're feeling kind of like, no, you're telling me what I need to tell you and how soon I need to tell you. I'm not ready to. And that's kind of like where the battling starts. And this is a time, anytime somebody's going through a loss, that's the last thing they need. And so kind of just communicating with each other that this is where I'm at. I love you. I will be okay. I just need some time. And then your partner saying, okay, like, I hear you. I love you. I'm here when you're ready to talk. I'm here to listen.
That's good.
And just kind of just leaving it open like that. Okay. I know that's more couples, but
no, and like I said, and we can talk, because like I said, it's a full hours dedicated to this, so we could talk about, I want to talk about it from a mother's perspective, because I think a lot of times, whether it's men or women, the way this affects people is, number one, it brings up the subject of death, and you begin to reflect, man, life can be over at any minute, and I need to make sure that I'm either being right with people or letting go of these petty things with individuals, and like be able to love my children the way I should love my children. And one of the things I see that cripples people when things like this happen is fear. People begin to get paranoid and fearful, like, I don't want to get on a helicopter, I don't want to get on a plane, I don't want to go in traffic. How does fear play a role in dealing with people dying?
Well, I mean, I think just kind of like what you just said right now, where it's just like it's like a trigger, and it reminds you of just like, if I go into this helicopter, I'm going to die. If I am going on a long ride, there's a possibility that I'm going to die. And so people are going to be very avoidant towards that right now in the beginning, but eventually they will start to kind of get back on their lives. But when you have a loss, like, just to add this a little bit, when you have a loss that's kind of like very shocking, and like all of a sudden, there's a fear around just like your life and death in general. And it's more of, and it can bring on a lot of thoughts like, shit, is this today the last day I'm going to see, my husband, or is this the last day I'm going to, and that's because your anxiety is rising. Everybody's anxiety is rising right now, because you are reflecting, can be going through like this existential crisis, like, what is happening? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do with my life? I can die tomorrow. There's all this talk. And like you said, like your friend had mentioned, you mentioned this earlier about like, can you just not talk about this anymore? Can you talk about something else? Because people don't want to sit in their own anxiety and just feel that yuckiness, because it's not a really good feeling to feel. But that's where the healing kind of starts to go, and like you start that healing process where you're able to just kind of sit with your anxiety, when you're able to just kind of feel those yucky emotions, and then open that conversation with a friend or with a partner or with your kids, and kind of validating their experience and letting them know, like, it's okay to be scared. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to pray? Are we going to do something to kind of take this off our minds? Like, are we going to spend more time with each other as a family? Because it can really make you reassess what you're doing in your life.
You bring up, right now, what comes to mind is Lady Gaga had an awesome interview with Oprah Winfrey. I don't know if you got to see it. I really encourage everyone to get a chance to just YouTube it. Lady Gaga. Oprah's doing this tour with, I think it's Weight Watchers, and they're just talking a lot about emotions and just 2020 and things like that. And Lady Gaga had mentioned something called radical acceptance. It's just, accepting radically what has happened, and that's when you start to do that, you can actually start to move forward. Because some people, when death or loss or the sickness of a loved one, one of the things that people tend to do is deny. They're in denial. They're like, this isn't happening, this didn't happen. what are some of the other ways that people deal? What are some of the, and I guess I don't want to say negative ways because people have to process everything, because you can't tell people don't do that. Because if they don't live through that or process that, then you're cheating them of actually getting the real help that they need. Because I've been an individual that's been told what to do and I do it because someone tells me, but it's not really something that I've processed. And so, like, what happens if I didn't process it and you just told me it, I can forget it because something else might come along. And if I haven't done the inner work, then I'm just back at square one. So, denial. What are some of the other ways that people, I guess we could say negative ways that people deal with bereaving or with death or with, like, the terminal illness of a loved one?
Like some ways, are you asking like what some ways that they?
What are some of the unhealthy ways that people cope with loss?
Oh, it can be like addictions, like going into like binge drinking. It could be drug use. It could be like suicidal behavior. It could be infidelity. Kids, it could be like aggressive behaviors at school. It could be aggressive behaviors at school or drug use at school.
That's a good list right there.
I'm like suicidal thoughts.
No, that's a really good comprehensive. That's a really good list right there of things. I think because I think everyone processes it differently, and I think for me it's important that we highlight and we call out those things because there are people that they don't say it, or they're not thinking it, or maybe someone else sees it in someone and they're not listening to them, but maybe if they hear it from someone else, they'll be like, oh, that's what she's been telling me, or that's what he's been telling me. So the grieving process, we're at 38, we're at 40 minutes into this. We got about 20 minutes left of our conversation. Let's talk a little bit more about dealing with death, bereavement. And I think you also said, was it guilt or something like, or depression you mentioned with regards to that? So help us understand depression a little bit more.
So when grieving turns into depression, that's going to look like grief and that mourning period and that bereavement period, and it's going to kind of magnify in areas of your daily functioning. So that's going to look like, yes, the crying, the tearfulness, the low moods. There could be weight gain, weight loss, difficulty concentrating. It could turn into like having suicidal thoughts and self-harming behaviors, sleeping issues, if I didn't mention that. But you're also going to see it affect your daily functioning. So kind of like what I mentioned earlier, which was having difficulty concentrating at work. That could be, just like I can't really focus on my work. I am having a difficult time. Maybe you're crying so often that you're having to go on breaks or trying to just get away. Maybe you're not hanging out with your coworkers or going to lunch with them like you used to. It could look like maybe your boss is noticing something in you that's different because they're talking to you now about your job performance. It can look like it affecting your relationship at home, like with your partner. That could look like maybe always fighting, or it could look like isolation. So you are isolating yourself. Maybe you're always in the bedroom, or you're keeping yourself busy with like excessive cleaning, and you're not really communicating with your partner, with your kids. Kids, it's a little different. So kids can actually act out in aggressive behavior. So it comes out with tantrums if they're on the younger side. A lot of anger outbursts. It could look like them isolating themselves and not wanting to hang out with you. Aside from typical teenager stuff, but you know your child as a parent when something has impacted them, and all of a sudden you've seen this shift in them. So as a parent, just kind of being aware of that, and just kind of like in general not wanting to socialize. Maybe you're watching too much TV, or you're sleeping too much, or you've developed insomnia and you just can't get enough sleep at night. So those are just kind of the symptoms of like depression, where you're looking at grief turning into that, and now it's affecting your daily functioning, and it's time to see a therapist, or it's time to seek help. It's time to talk to somebody about this, what was grief or what did have to do with the loss to now depression.
So, we've talked about grief, bereavement. We've talked about male perspective, a mother. Have we touched on mother's perspective of dealing with it? We talked about fear a little bit. That mothers begin to have a fear and things of those sorts. So, the fact that your specific service office is how do you pronounce that?
Uremia.
Uremia. Does that mean something?
Yes, so it means calm and serene, and in Greek. So it was a Greek term that my husband actually found, and I just kind of tweaked the letters a little to spell it how I spell it.
Cool. And so I appreciate the fact that you specifically work with the trauma community. So let's spend the next 10 minutes talking about what are some of the things that we can do as individuals, whether we are a man, whether we are a woman, whether we are a teenager, to deal with grief and to deal with bereavement and to deal with death. What are some of the things, what are some tools that we can share with people that they can put into practice? One of them you just mentioned, get help. Call a therapist, call a counselor, call your pastor, your priest, call someone that you could talk to about this kind of stuff. But what are some other things that can be done?
And we'll talk just briefly, sorry, before I lose
No,
my
you're
train
good.
of thought, briefly about like resources and where to connect. So healthy communication is number one. So communicating with your partner, just kind of like what we talked about earlier, when you are going through something. And given the examples that I kind of gave as far as giving them the space and time and that respect, and make sure you maintain that respect with each other, and there's not a lot of arguing, and being more self-aware of your partner's feelings. So you know your partner, and like, okay, they are feeling angry right now because I know like that's their angry look, or I know that that's how they get when they're defensive, and just being okay with that and not really throwing it in their face and saying, well, you're being like this again, because that's just going to create an argument. And especially, again, I have to reiterate, with the grief and loss, you have to really just give them that time and just letting them be. And are we perfect? No. Are we going to say things? Yes. But also, if that happens, giving yourself some, just kind of like just some credit, just being okay with yourself, or just saying, you know what, okay, I shouldn't have done that. I'll talk to them in a moment once I'm calm, and you just want to repair that. And because if you don't, then that's just going to make, it's going to make the situation worse. I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I want to word this? So communication, and then, reaching out to your friend, like I mentioned, or like you had mentioned, reaching out to your friends and letting them know, you know what, hey, I'm just having a difficult moment. And sometimes you just need to like text it out. Sometimes you just need to talk it out. And if you're not needing anything from them, just letting them know, like, I just need to say this and that's it. Or meeting up with a friend if you need to meet up with them. For kids, I think it's what we practice a lot is co-regulation for parent and a child. So that means as a parent, you're going to model for your child what they need. So that can be like taking care of themselves. Okay, you're feeling really upset, you're feeling really angry, maybe after a tantrum, and that could be giving them hugs, kisses, letting them know that you love them, doing some deep breathing. It could be finding an activity that the two of you guys can do together, or do together as a family, and that's like engaging in an activity where you guys are gonna open the table up for like conversation and talking. Oh, that's another thing. Talk about your feelings. Talk about what you are feeling in regards to this loss. If you're watching the news with your kids, check in with them and talk about it. If you're feeling a certain way about what you're watching on the news, or maybe something's come up and you're talking about it with your partner in front of the kids, include your kids in it, and be okay with that, because And even if you're not, then you're not, and that's okay. But talking about this loss is so important because we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it because we don't want to feel the fear that it's possible that I could die tomorrow. It's possible that I can lose somebody that I love very much. And I think that's kind of like where your friend was going. It's just like, no, I'm tired of hearing about this. And it's too much for people to hear. It's too much for people to experience and just to kind of sit with their emotions.
Yeah. As you were speaking, one of the things that came to my mind that sometimes people struggle with when dealing with death or bereavement is survivor's guilt. I know that it was a huge thing with different communities that I've worked with where people were like, what if I would have, I should have been the one there. It could, like, especially as a parent, parents are like, man, take me, not my kids. Survivor's guilt. How, so we talked about communication. Have communication, give time, give space. What you've mentioned right here, talk about it, have an active conversation about it. Don't, because sometimes people think, like, well, I don't want to talk about it with them. Maybe they're not ready. But if you don't talk to your kids about these things, they're going to talk about it through social media. They're going to talk about it with their friends at school. So what better way than to have this conversation with your children? That way, when your children go through something, they potentially will trust you and to share with you their feelings rather than sharing them with someone else,
Right. And even if they don't share it with you, you just, there's that open door policy, that we talk about at work. It's just like, I'm here if you want to talk, and just kind of putting that out there so that they know, like, hey, mom or dad always said I can talk to them, and I'm feeling really alone, and I'm actually going to take them up on this, and I'm going to talk to them. So just always put it out there. Back to the survivor's guilt.
Yeah. You
need to go to therapy for that. There's no quick fix. It has to be done through a process because there's multiple layers that feeds onto that, and that really needs a professional to kind of get you through that.
Yeah. And so what are some of the things that people are rationalizing in their mind or saying in their mind of an individual that you can identify, like, this person really feels guilty because they're still alive and someone else is dying or someone else has died? Like, what are the signs of identifying, this person probably, this loved one, this individual, this friend should probably be seeking some professional help?
Well, they're not going to identify it first.
Okay.
Like, first of all,
They won't.
They won't.
But how can we, as someone who's watching someone or who maybe has heard them say something, maybe they didn't identify it, they didn't say, like, I feel bad because I'm still alive, but they're making certain kind of comments.
Yeah, so one thing, it's really common is that it's my fault. I should have made this call, or I should have done this, or there's a lot of, you'll hear a lot of comments where there's self-blame, or like the could-haves, I should haves. I'm not going to, like, the avoidance where you're not going to do certain things because you're kind of seeing them make this, how do I want to say this? Like, you're seeing them make a decision that's not based, like, that's not rational, I guess, if I want to say that. I can't think of an example of how I want to put that. But I would think it would just be more of like the should-haves and couldn'ts, and that they're not going to identify that they are actually feeling the guilt. Yeah.
No, and I thank you for talking on it, because the thing is, like, after seeing and witnessing, and then, working at Interface for 8 years, doing intake, working the 211 and working the mental health and doing the classes with people with domestic violence, anger management, all those things, going to all the seminars like trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, I began to learn and pay attention and hear all these things, and that's why I know these things are key, and I know that people do not have access to mental health services. They can't put a name to it sometimes. They can't, or their loved one can't be like, man, like, something is wrong with you or something is happening, and they just don't know how to address it. And that's really what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about communicating and providing this knowledge. And I thank you so much because you are extremely knowledgeable. And I thank you for bringing that to this platform so that we can share. So let me see, time check. We're at the last about 8 minutes of our show. Mrs. Silly Panda Media, Jose, and then we'll come back right over here. Any thoughts, feedback, or questions you might have for her? That since she's here, it's free. We have 1 hour of free therapy right now. This is your moment, and you can say, a friend. I'm asking for a friend. So let's see. So any questions that come to mind, or anything that you want to sort of discuss on this topic?
No, I think Teresa pretty much like put it into perspective. But what I do want to say is, if there is anything that, with everything that's gone or happened with Kobe and his daughter and the other people we can't forget, also that passed away on that flight.
Yes.
Is none of us are promised tomorrow, and I'm sure everyone that's been impacted with this has really like it hits home like that, like, man, not so much the survivor's guilt type of thing, but more of like, you really don't know when your time is going to come. And Jose always tells me, like, if he's going to go somewhere, he'll kiss me goodbye. He always, always, always says, okay, kiss me, because what if I don't see you again? And so, like, it never really, I guess, hit me until just last night. He said that to me, and I told him, shut up, don't say that. But yet he's been saying this to me for years, every day before he leaves for work. There's been times where, like, I'm asleep, but I know he prays for me. I know that he kisses me goodbye. I know he does the same with our girls. And because it's an everyday thing, it's kind of something that I guess we've grown accustomed to and we're used to. But with all of this going on, it really does make you think about your own life. And man, like, you can't take it for granted and just really live in the now. And, you see it all over social media, just people posting, hug your loved ones tonight, tell them that you love them. And it seems so, like, simple, but yet it's so hard for some people, make amends with people that you maybe have lost touch with or whatever. And it's like, it shouldn't take something like this for us to be human and to have a heart and to care for people and worry, not so much worry about people, but just to be considerate. If you see your friends that are struggling, with grieving or depression of any sort, or, something's going on at home with them, and pretty much if you consider yourself a friend, I feel anyway, you're going to keep in contact with them and make sure that they are okay, because maybe they're not ready to talk about it, like you shared, Teresa. Maybe they're not ready to be vocal about it, and as a friend, I don't think that it should ever stop you from really reaching out to them, because you never know God's perfect timing, when it comes. Maybe because they know that you've been in constant contact with them or checking up on them, maybe when the time comes for them to finally open up and say, okay, I'm ready to talk about it, they'll know that you've always been reaching out to them and they're more open to share with you than anyone else. So it's kind of like being the light to people, but then also really appreciating life itself, because you really don't know. He had everything, really. He was a family man, he was a legend in basketball, he was creating his new future and everything, and he had so much more to give. And that goes for any of us, you just, it's just still, like, crazy to think about, but it's something also, not just to look at it like from that perspective, like, hey, well, he was famous, and it's not that. And I'm pretty sure, I've seen on social media, people are like, not to sound heartless either, they're tired of hearing about it, because it's been everywhere because of the person that he was. But how many people has this happened to? And it's just because they're not at that level, so it's not recognized. So it's us learning too how to deal and help people, and just really reach out to people. You never know what kind of impact you're going to have on somebody. We all have that opportunity, and I think it's something that we can't take for granted.
Jose, any comments, thoughts, questions that have come to mind as you've heard the conversation?
No, I really don't have any questions right now. I mean, just the comment, like my wife said, about me, always when I tell her, hey, give me a kiss or whatever, whatnot, or if I leave somewhere, he kiss me because I might not make it back. And the only reason why I said that or would say that is because of my past life, and if it wasn't for the grace of God on my life, I'd probably be somewhere that I shouldn't be, or I understand that. So, and I do get ahead of myself in a sense, but then I remember what I was and what I used to be, and then it grounds me to not take things for granted. So, I have a lot of friends that are, they've overdosed, or, they've been I grew up in gangs and all that, so I know, where I should be. But I understand there was a grace on my life, and that's kind of like where I got that comment from, or make that comment, because I know each day is a new day, and I've learned, now that I'm older, I've learned to, but one crazy thought I did have is like because of what the journey that I'm on now with this media stuff and all that, and the people that are coming in contact with, and it's like,
Why didn't I start this in my younger years?
no, it was an actual dumb, I think about it now, it was a dumb thought. It's like, why should I try to succeed if I could just be taken away from me like that? You know what I mean? It's like, why am I gonna give it my all, and then it could take one incident, one accident, not even my fault, I can get hit by a drunk driver, or something could happen at work. I work in construction, in an instant it'd all be taken. So everything that I worked for, that was just a quick thought. And I know I had to get it out of my head right away because it wasn't a good seed. So I was like, I can't get that. But it did pass through my mind. It's like, okay, why even do all this? Why?
Yeah. Was that a recent thought for you after?
Yeah, that was the reason. Yeah,
Okay.
because it was like this guy achieved everything. He was on to his next phase in his next career. He did everything he could for basketball. He proved himself, right? He won championships. He MVPs. All stars. You know what I mean? He tore his Achilles and came back out. And took 2 free throws. You know what I mean? Because that's the type of man he was. And then you figure out now he's out writing books, and he did animation, won an Academy Award, and he's just everything he touched was successful, and he's only 41.
Yeah.
And then to think like, it's like, because today I heard Shaq on they were talking about it. It's like now he can't enjoy his induction into the Hall of Fame. He's not gonna be there to see his daughters get married. He's not gonna see his first grandchildren. It's like, why put, that was like a crazy thought. I know I shouldn't have thought it, but it was like, why should I put all this effort into everything, and then at one moment it could be all gone?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then but I knew that was just a dumb thought on my end. But it's like, but it's I don't know why I thought that.
Well,
I think it's a dumb thought. You might think, but I think it's a real thought.
I was gonna say that it's a
And
valid
people,
thought.
it's a valid thought. People are thinking that. People do think that. I think that. Like, what the heck? Like, what am I doing all this for?
Right.
But yeah, go ahead.
But finding your worth in that, Jose, you found it right away, and you're just like, no, like, you kind of kicked that thought out. Not everybody can do that, and I think, taking a religious perspective from this, is that's where your faith and your hope kind of kicks in, and you're just like, I'm going to have faith, and I'm going to keep hope, and I'm going to continue doing this for the very exact reasons that I started this business, and thinking about those people that had influenced you, that gave you that courage, and that had given you like that support throughout this whole time that you were here doing what you're doing today. And not everybody has that. Some people are just living day to day on a couple dollars, and they're just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. And that's a reality. Not everybody has that. And so that right there is a blessing that you were able to just identify that in that moment.
Thank you.
Blessing for him, and a blessing for everyone that will get to watch this or hear this. Because like I said, you said, and your friend back there nodding, I'm sorry, what's your name? Ada? Ada's back there nodding, and it's just like, it's a valid thought because people think that, and I think one of the best things that we could do is throw our feelings out there. If we have to be this is what I say, if I have to be the guinea pig to express all of my drama, all of my crap, all of my insecurities, all of my trauma for the sake of helping someone else that maybe is not at that place, then so be it. Because by the grace of God, those of us have, we have what I call resiliency. What I heard you identify in him is that he has this resiliency because we developed that. Those of us that have went through trauma, gang, crime, drugs, death, we developed that, and we don't even realize it. We don't realize it, but I love that word resiliency. But we're coming to the closing minutes, but because I'm the executive producer and director, we can make this 2 hours.
No, we can't.
No, we can't.
I'll shut the sound down.
Oh my God.
Sound engineer.
Woo, the sound engineer, he's gonna cut us off. So we got a couple minutes left because I know we started a little bit late. So in the closing minutes, first of all, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on. I repent of everything that I said that was negative in the beginning that made me nervous. And I probably will not rebroadcast this. I'm going to edit it and probably cut that out. So those of you that watch live.
You should.
Huh?
You should. Yes.
I am. But so in closing, communication, the fact that grieving is a lifelong journey process, identifying, people that possibly some of this depression. We've talked about that. We've talked about how men handle, giving them that space, woman, wife, girlfriend, Sancha, wherever you are at in this situation, give them that space and give them that time. See, I tell you, I just say, because I need to be real because everyone needs to hear it. I don't hate on anybody. Everyone needs to hear it. You should stop messing around with him, but that's another show. We'll have a show dealing with trampas.
Trampas?
Can you help us with that? Because there's some people.
What are you saying, dude?
There are some people that struggle with that. But going back to this.
Just gonna edit that part too.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna edit that. I'm leaving that in there. So.
Trampas con dramas.
Trampas con drama. Believe me, if they have dilemma of the day on Q1047 or 95.9, we can have trampas con la drama con las trampas, or trampo, whatever, male trampas too. So where? Come on, where? You know what?
You included.
I confessed. See. So, in closing, humor's good. People, laughter is medicine for the soul. Okay. So, closing thoughts, closing facts, closing information on contacting you. How does someone get a hold of you for services? Because I know that you promote that you do free 15-minute consultations. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay, so help us out, give us some contact information, and we'll include it later in some of the posts and stuff like that. And as you guys can see, we've been updating our technology, and I'm slowly working on it. But I'll include that information in the bios and in the informations. How can someone get a hold of you?
So they can call me at my number, 805-509-0296. Or they can send me an email.
Okay.
You can find that on my website, but I'll just kind of throw it out there. So it's Teresa@eremiacounseling.com. You can just send me an email like that. Or give me a call. So I'm not a Medi-Cal provider, and I say that because that's the number one question I get. So if you do have Medi-Cal and you are looking for services, I would encourage you to contact the Ventura County Behavioral Health, their behavioral health line, to get an assessment to see if you qualify for services, or else
Interface.
Interface. I
would
Children
suggest
and Family Services.
211 is probably
211
is the place to go to with regards to any of those services. They provide all the resources, and it's just easy because I don't have the VCBH number.
Right, yeah, that's right. 211, you just have your pen and paper, and they'll give you all this information for mental health services in the county.
And the awesome thing is that you can actually text 211. So there's so many ways of being able to get a hold of 211. So whether you feel suicidal, whether you feel depressed, whether you feel like this is too much for you, you can contact 211. They have the numbers to the suicide hotline. And one of the things I want to always say is that you don't have to be on the verge of committing suicide to access these services. They are trained to be able to help you and sort of de-escalate you and probably assess where you're at. And so I always want people to know is like, you know what, if you have the thoughts, if you're struggling with it, call, to get the help, to get, because some of you, maybe you just need that person to sort of just let you know that, what you're thinking is okay. that it's maybe not irrational, and that you're actually processing whatever feelings you're going through correctly, and by reaching out, you're doing the right thing. So 211, your phone number, you said it. Is there a website, and what's your Instagram and your Facebook?
So my website is iremiacounseling.com, and then my Instagram is at iremia.counseling.
Okay.
I don't know my Facebook.
Okay. So, and it's all good. We'll try to include all that information, like I said, in the info of this video. But like, any closing thoughts or any closing things that you would like to say as we get ready to end this live?
Take what I said today with a grain of salt, because we aren't perfect. We're human. Give yourself some credit if you feel like you are doing the right thing in helping your loved ones. Just do the best you can. That's really all you can do.
Okay. Well, as people group of Southern California, California, as the world go through this situation that's happening right now, that is affecting a lot of people, our prayers, our thoughts are with you guys. Please don't stay in silence. Don't suffer in silence. Get help. There is help. And once again, one of the best numbers to contact for any kind of resources in our county of Ventura, and even actually national. 211 is a nationally recognized number. Wherever county you're in, whatever city you're in, you can contact that number. It'll direct you to the closest call center in your area so that you can get services and resources and phone numbers. And of course, you can always hit up our friend right here, that Teresa. That's been, it's been a blessing to have you here with us. Your husband is here with us also, right?
Yes, and my best friend.
And your best friend. Hi, guys. Thank you guys for supporting. And thank you guys for being patient with meeting this knucklehead for the first time. But with that said, this is it. That's what's good. This is the ending of our broadcast. Tune in every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. The rebroadcast will be available via YouTube. God bless you guys. Have an amazing night. And that's it for us. Bye-bye.